Elizabeth at Literary Princess. If you are new here, welcome. I am a 6-year PhD candidate in English literature with a focus on Victorian women novelists. And as you might expect, I love to read. Today I have my April wrap-up for you, which I'm like, some of these, I'm looking at them, I'm like, oh wow, I did read this month. It feels like longer ago than just a month, but okay. So I technically read 13 books in April. 5 of those were for the event Picture This, which means they were picture books. I have a whole separate wrap-up for that you can go and watch. So I am going to be talking about the 8 remaining books that I read and the 1 DNF. I was participating in 2 events this month. The Robinson Read-Along, hosted by Kelly from Books I'm Not Reading, and the April TBR Clear Out Readathon, hosted by Katie from Books and Things. So 6 of these books counted for the TBR Clear Out Readathon, and then also the DNF, which means I went over my goal of reading 5 books for it, which is great. And I'm actually unhauling quite a few, so that's also exciting. So let's jump in. First up is a fairy tale retelling that came up on my new acquisitions TBR wheel. This is Midnight Pearls by Debbie Vigui. Like I said, it's a Little Mermaid retelling following a girl named Pearl who is found in the ocean and raised by the couple that finds her. And then a lot of stuff happens. A lot of stuff happens for this tiny book. She's friends with the Prince James, and then a ton of stuff starts happening. I don't even know how else to describe it. I gave this 2.5 stars. It was an interesting retelling, and I liked a lot of aspects of it. Like, there were kind of 3 separate characters that could be counted as the Little Mermaid character. Pearl, of course, but also, and I'm not going to remember names at all, another mer woman who does trade her voice to become human, and then a merman who trades his eyes to become human. So that was super interesting. However, it's not long enough for what it was trying to do. It really needed to be a longer book. Nothing felt fleshed out. The characters felt very flat. The relationships were very insta-love. And yeah, so I gave this 2.5 stars. I enjoyed reading it. It was fun, but it wasn't great or even really good. It was just entertaining for like an hour or 2. Just realized I forgot to move the books from the last video. Oops. Anyway, yeah, Midnight Pearls. I'm unhauling this one. After that, I read all the picture books, and then I decided to pick up one of the books from my 2025 TBR that had not come up on the wheel, but April is National Poetry Month, so I decided to pick up Sappho. This edition is translated by Mary Barnard. Sappho is obviously an ancient Greek poet. We have really only fragments from her, which is very clear when you read this. There's a few that are like more whole, but mostly it's fragments. I gave this 3.5 stars. They weren't my favorite poems in the world. There was one really nice one that I liked that whoever owned this before me had highlighted. Although they are only breath, words which I command are immortal. Really liked that. The rest of them, I was just kind of meh. I can't even remember the rest of them for the most part. But I am glad I read it. I am unhauling it though. We then get to March's book for the 18th Century Novel Project, which got finished in April. This is Gulliver's Travels by Jonathan Swift. I have a whole video about this, so I'm not really going to talk about it in detail. Gulliver goes on a lot of voyages and ends up in really strange places. I give this 2.5 stars. I didn't really like it that much. I can appreciate its importance in the like development of the English novel, and there were a few parts that I liked, but I didn't really like it that much. Again, you can go and watch my video if you would like to see my full thoughts. But yeah, I am keeping this one because it's a penguin, and as I'm sure you can tell, I like my penguins. So I am keeping it. Plus I've highlighted it. And I mean, like, I don't know. It's a classic that, I don't know, maybe I'll come back to. I don't know. But yeah, not for me. So, up until this point, other than the picture books, the month had been pretty mediocre. However, luckily, Juliet Marillier came to save the day with Dreamer's Pool. This is the first book in the Blackthorn and Grimm series. We are following Blackthorn, a woman healer who had been imprisoned, but is given a second chance to live because she was about to be executed by one of the Fae. Along with her comes Grimm, a fellow prisoner, and they, according to her deal with the Fae, she has to go to this specific place and act as the healer to the area. Meanwhile, the prince of that place is getting married. He has become betrothed to a woman he has only spoken to through letters, but he is very much in love with her. Flidis is her name, which is an odd name and kind of tripped me up through the whole thing. However, when Flidis arrives, she is very different than what her letters led the prince to believe. She doesn't like to do the same things she said she did in the letters, like going on walks in the woods and reading and writing. And her dog, who she absolutely adored in the letters, won't even go near her without trying to bite her. So something's going on, so the prince asks Blackthorn and Grimm to help him figure it out. This was my favorite of the month. Was it the only 5-star read of the month? It was. Well, other than the picture books, but like, that's different. I love this so much. First of all, it is a fairy tale retelling, even though it is never listed as such, but this is a retelling of the Goose Girl. Period. Like, no way around it. No, there's no geese, but it's the Goose Girl. So, I adored it. I love the characters. I love Blackthorn. She is a very flawed person, but she has her heart in the right place. Grimm, I also really like. I want to learn more about him. I plan to continue this series because I do want to learn more about him. And then I loved the story with the prince. What the heck was his name? Oren. Not a very hard name. I loved the plot with Oren and Flidis and all of this. And the dog, Bramble. Love. Yeah, no, this was so good. If you're wanting a good fantasy to pick up, yes. I knew that I was gonna love this. And I don't know why I put it off as long as I did. I talked about this in the TBR video. But yeah, I love this, and I'm so glad I picked it up for this readathon because it really kind of saved the day. And yeah. Yeah, so good. So good. Next up was for my in-person book club. This is Madonna in a Fur Coat by Sabahattin Ali. This is a Turkish classic published in 1943. It was translated by Maureen Freely and Alexander Daw. And this follows a shy young man, Rafe, as he travels from his homeland, Turkey, to Berlin in the 1920s and meets and falls in love with a woman named Maria. This was beautiful. This was absolutely beautiful. It's about unrequited love. It's about like that this meeting a person and having them be your soulmate, but then things not working out. It was very sad. It was pretty sad. And I don't know, it was just gorgeously written. It reminded me a lot of The Great Gatsby, personally, because we have this frame narrator who's unnamed, who has met Rafe when Rafe is an older man, and is like a very just kind of downtrodden. And then this man reads a diary that Rafe gives him, telling the story of how he met Maria and fell in love with her. So I don't know, and it had like that love that just doesn't work out, kind of like The Great Gatsby. Anyway, I thought this was beautiful. I gave it 4 stars. I don't really want to say too much about it because I don't know how to describe it. It's just, like, Maria is kind of emotionally unavailable. She tells him, like, don't fall in love with me and don't ask me for anything because all men are always asking me for things. But they do both fall in love with each other, I believe. And I don't know, just gorgeous, very sad. I highly recommend checking it out because I don't know, I'm so glad that I read it. I had never heard of it before, but I thought it was beautiful. Then we get to the read for the Robinson read-along, which is Lila, the 3rd book in the Gilead series. This is telling the story of John Ames's wife, Lila. We met her in the 1st book and the 2nd book, but we have only seen her through the points of view of other people. So now it's a 3rd-person narration, but it really very much feels like her voice still. Like, I kind of was like, why isn't it 1st person? Because it could have been. We are seeing her backstory. So while the first 2 books in the series kind of happen at the same time, but we're seeing them from different perspectives, Lila goes back to show us how Lila came into John Ames's life and how they had their son, Robbie. I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. It's just still not as good as the 1st book. I don't know. I really liked the 1st-person narration from the 1st book. And I'm kind of sad that she didn't repeat that in the next 2 books, especially since I feel like Lila easily could have been in the 1st person because of how strong Lila's voice was. But yeah, Lila spends her childhood kind of being nomadic with this woman named Doll, who is not her mother, but who kind of took her out of this house that was presumably her parents' house, but it was horrible. She was being neglected. But now they are just moving around from place to place, sometimes with another group, sometimes by themselves. And eventually, Lila has gone off on her own for reasons we don't know until later in the book. And she comes to the town of Gilead, where she meets John Ames. Yeah, I really liked this. I liked getting some insight into Lila's backstory because she's a very interesting figure in the first 2 books, especially the 1st book, since it's from the point of view of her husband, obviously. And there's some stuff that we get to see in this book from her point of view that we have seen from John Ames's point of view in the 1st book. So I did really like it. It's beautifully written, as all of these have been. Just still didn't quite like it as much as the 1st book, so 4 stars. Next up, we had Praying with Jane Eyre, Reflections on Reading as a Sacred Practice by Vanessa Zoltan. This was weird. I gave this 2.5 stars. I didn't really know what to do with it. Like, it was easy to read, and sometimes I was interested in, like, I was very interested in this idea of taking a novel and using it as a sacred text and treating it like you would the Bible or the Quran or whatever other sacred text you might use. I am Christian, so the Bible is what I would be usually thinking of treating like this. Like I said, it's odd, but I think there were some really good practices in the final chapter that's like a toolkit on sacred reading, and it gives you these kind of like tips for how to do it, and I thought some of those were really interesting and like might be something I could try. However, I did not agree with some of Zoltan's interpretation, especially of Jane Eyre. She talks about a few other books at the end. Little Women, Harry Potter, and The Great Gatsby she talks about. I don't know. I found it very odd. It's like, it's a memoir, really, but through the lens of her doing this sacred reading. I don't know. It was kind of meh. And like I said, I didn't agree with some of her interpretations of Jane Eyre. She kind of talked a lot about how the author doesn't really matter for reading the book as a sacred text. I kind of had some issues with that. Like there was a point when she was talking about Harry Potter that she said, I didn't learn these lessons from J.K. Rowling, I learned them from Hermione. I'm like, but no, J.K. Rowling wrote Hermione. So, this was published in 2000. This was published in 2021, so she did address the crap Rowling's been spouting lately. And was kind of like, it was kind of arguing for like the separation of the text and the author. I don't know. I was just kind of like, I don't really think you can separate the author and the text quite the way she's trying to do here. Because, like I said, you did not learn the lesson from the character. You learned it from the author. The character is not a real person. So you learned the lesson through the author's portrayal of the character. So yeah, I don't know. I wasn't really on board with everything, but some of these ideas for reading that were in the back were pretty interesting. Like, let me see if I can find something particularly good. Oh, like underlining favorite sentences that she's like treating as prayer and like writing them down and thinking about what are these quotes saying? What do they mean? Like usual close reading stuff. Like particularly she's talking about in relation to her life, I guess, but I don't know. Like I said, this one was kind of weird. I didn't really know what to do with it. I gave it 2.5 stars, and I'm going to be unhauling it. And then the final book that I finished was Daisy Miller by Henry James. So this was off of the New Acquisitions TBR, and it counted for the prompt in the TBR Clear Out Readathon to read the shortest book on your, or one of the shortest books on your TBR. This is very short, only 126 pages with notes. So I read this in like, I think 2 hours. And it was fine. So it's telling the story of Winterbourne, who is a young American man at Lake Geneva. And he meets a young girl named Daisy Miller, who is an American girl, also at Lake Geneva. And she's not your typical society girl. Her family seems to be pretty new money, and she doesn't really seem to know how she's supposed to be acting, so she just does what she wants. And it kind of gets her into some trouble. Like, this was fine. I don't really understand how this was, like, as popular as it was in the time. Like, this is apparently the first of his books that got really popular. I'm just kind of like, why? I didn't think there was enough space for stuff to be happening. I didn't feel like I got any real insight into the characters at all. The writing was nice. Like, but yeah, I gave this 3 stars. Like, it was fine, but like, I guess I just don't see what the fuss is about. This is only my second Henry James book. I have read one short story by him as well. And yeah, I think I kind of felt a similar way about The Turn of the Screw. I was like, yeah, it's fine, but I don't see what the fuss is about. So I'm hoping that's not going to be my experience with all Henry James books. But yeah, I'm going to hold on to this one because I like holding on to classics, especially when they're from my time period. So yeah, I don't know, maybe I'll revisit it sometime in a few years and see if maybe I get more out of it then. So those were all the books I finished, but I did DNF one book, and that was Elmet by Fiona Mosley. I read 70 pages of this, and I just could not get into it. It's about a family living in Yorkshire, and they're like kind of just like live out in the woods almost by themselves. Like, they're not really interacting a whole lot with society. Something has happened. We know that because the narrator, Daniel, tells us something has happened, but we don't know what at the point I got to. I don't know. I just couldn't get into it. I didn't really care about the characters or find anything interesting about them. It was very slow moving. And even 70 pages in, I couldn't really tell what it was going to be about. So I decided I'm just going to unhaul it. Which is kind of why I wanted to read it for this clear out readathon, because I wanted to know, should I keep this or should I unhaul it? And I've decided I am unhauling it. So those are the non-picture books that I read in the month of April. Thank you to Kelly and Katie for hosting these events. I really enjoyed participating. Cannot wait to finish off the Gilead series with Jack in May. Let me know down in the comments below. Have you read any of these books? What did you think of them? What did you read in April? What events were you participating in? If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to see more of my bookish content. It has been great chatting with you. I will see you soon. Bye.